And this idea of discipline, obviously, I talk about discipline a lot. And one of the things you were talking about earlier with regards to veterans and people that have listened to your lectures, and it's the same thing with me, people that listen to this podcast or read the books. And one of the things that I've noticed and I've talked about and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on is, when you're in the military, you have this discipline. And beyond the discipline that's imposed on you, you also have a lot that you have to just hold the line yourself. I mean, when you're in the military, sure, you go through boot camp where there's a drill instructor that's yelling and all that. But once you're in the military, you're doing what you have to do. It's self-discipline that you learn that and you become self-disciplined. And what happens is guys get out and that's gone and that hurts them. And the other thing that hurts them is they don't know what their mission is anymore. Mm-hmm. And my big thing with people that I've been telling vets now is find what your next mission is. Go find whatever your next mission is. And I don't care what it is, but it has to be something. And I was listening to you talk on something the other day, and you were talking about how not doing anything, when people are not going anywhere, when they're failing, when they don't have the drive, it's because they're not accepting responsibility for anything. And so my way of saying that is like, you need a new mission. You need to be responsible for something, and you need to go and move towards some new mission. And do you encounter people that, or you see people that's very problematic in the civilian side as well, where people, they just don't know what they're doing. They don't taking responsibility for anything.
That's part of this nihilism, is that because first of all, you learn that truth is relative, and that there's no real moral order. And, that alleviates you of responsibility. And that's why that's such an attractive message to people. But the problem is that it kills you. It kills your soul, so to speak, because, when we can talk about this technically. So, there are systems, neurological systems that underlie your experience of negative emotion, and there are neurological systems that underlie your experience of positive emotion, and they're separate systems. They obviously interact, but they're separate systems. So, but the positive emotion system, there's two of them, but one of them sort of kicks in when you get something that you want. So, you're hungry and you eat, and that feels good. And so that's kind of the simple one. But there's a more sophisticated one that I think is even more active in people. And it's the one that tells you that you're moving forward towards something worthwhile. And that's actually the one that gives people that sense of meaningful engagement in their life on a moment-to-moment basis. So, and it's also something that doesn't have to go away. Like if you're hungry and you eat, that's good, but it's over, and then you're on to the next thing, right? It's not exactly sustaining, it's just necessary. That's called consummatory reward, by the way. This other reward system is incentive reward. And the incentive reward system works on dopamine, this neurochemical dopamine, which is also the neurochemical tracks that opiates and cocaine and amphetamines, the drugs that people really like to abuse, alcohol often for some people, activate. And so you might say if you don't have enough meaning in your life, then you're more prone to addiction. And that's definitely the case, even with rats. If you take a rat and you put him in a cage by himself and he has nothing to do, and then you give him access to cocaine, he'll get addicted to the point where he won't do anything but take cocaine. But if you throw the rat back in with a bunch of other rats and he gets to do rat things, then it's very hard to get him addicted to cocaine. And so the purposeless rat is prone to addiction. Well, it's the same with human beings. Now, here's a corollary to that, which is really cool. So the magnitude of the reward you experience as you're moving towards a goal is proportionate to the importance of the goal. So that means the more important the goal you pick, the more possibility there is for the kind of reward, let's say, it's really a state of being that is life-affirming. And it is directly life-affirming in that, like if you're in a football game and it's an important football game and maybe you break a finger. And, normally that's a problem. It hurts and you're going to stop doing whatever you're doing. But if you're right in the middle of the game, then you'll be so amped up on this reward system that it's analgesic. It stops the pain. It also suppresses anxiety. So if you have a purpose, then it's analgesic. It takes some of the pain out of life. It's very positive in that it motivates and energizes you and focuses you and makes you able to remember and pay attention. And it quells fear. And so those things are all direct. And so then you might think, what's the best possible goal? Well, and that's the purpose, I would say, of religious training and philosophical training. It's like, just what the hell are you doing in the world? You know, and I would say, well, that's actually fairly easy to also lay out. And this is why nihilism is a much weaker philosophical position than it might appear to be. It's like, well, there are lots of terrible things happening in the world. If you're not, I don't care if you're a believer, an atheist, or a cynic of the highest sort, you listen to a story like the one that you read at the beginning of this podcast, and no one says, well, in 100,000 years, who the hell cares? So why does it matter? No one says that. They listen to that. Not if they're human. They listen to that story and they think, that's not good. It's like, that's right. That's not good. It's not good. You should do something about that. Because it's self-evidently not good. So you might say, well, at least you can start your self-organization by improving those things around you that are self-evidently not good. And that's easy, man. Anybody can do this. You can sit down for 10 minutes, say, well, I'm going to be honest with myself. Like, oh, that's a horrible thing to do. I'm going to be honest with myself. Okay, I'm probably doing a dozen stupid things that I could quit doing that are making my life more wretched, and also the people around me. And so you think, okay, what are those things? And you know, if you really want to know, you have to want to know. And you're going to get a bunch of information that you don't want to hear, but you'll know it's true, and you already knew it in some sense. And then you can ask yourself, okay, that sucks, and it's miserable, and it's not very self-affirming. Is there one of those things I would be willing to do something about, that I would actually do something about, you know, that I could do something about, that I would do something about, which is also another horrible question, because as soon as you get an answer to that, then you have a responsibility, right? It's like, oh God, I have to go do that. And it's something you don't want to do. You don't want to do it. That's why you've been avoiding it. And so then it's right in front of you. And it's like it's some little trivial, horrible thing that you're not going to get a pat on the back for, and no one's going to give you an award for it. And most people would just say, Jesus, you should have done that a long time ago, you moron. But then you go do it. That's kind of humility, I would say. And then you keep doing that. And it's like there's this injunction in the New Testament against praying in public. You know, and it's like virtue signaling. It's like you don't pray in public because then you go out and you show everybody just what a great believer you are and how good you are. It's like, well, that's what you're doing. You're not trying to get your act together. That's something you do in private at home. You think, okay, what kind of moron am I? And what stupid things am I doing? And then what could I possibly do to get rid of one of those a little bit now? Well, anybody can do that. And that's associated with these great evils, you know, in this way that we've already described. It's like you're constraining, you're improving your character, and you're constraining the kinds of actions and perceptions that you have that are going to make you sick of life and work against it. Because failure does that. That's the Cain story. It's like, keep screwing up, man. See what happens. If you think that isn't going to make you bitter, and if that isn't going to make you vengeful, and if that isn't going to make you work to hurt people around you, or at least not to help them, which is the same thing, then you're just not paying attention. Everyone knows that's true. So, well, that's responsibility, right? And then, so you take on this great task of putting yourself together. It gives you life meaning. And that also helps you be buttressed against the fact that there's lots of suffering in life and there's lots of malevolence. It's like, yeah, true, man. Absolutely. It's worse than you think even. But you can do more about it than you think. And there's nothing in it except good, but you also have to take responsibility.